Hello, dear friends, and welcome to the Shire. Tonight, we'll embark on a magical journey to the heart of Hobbiton during the most wonderful time of the year, Christmas season. Imagine the rolling hills blanketed in soft snow, the cozy Hobbit holes aglow with warm candlelight, and the faint scent of baked pies and roasted chestnuts wafting through the crisp, wintry air. As the chimneys puff gentle clouds of smoke, and the twinkling lights of Hobbiton shimmer like stars, the Shire feels like a world frozen in time, perfect for reflection, relaxation, and a little bit of festive cheer. Before we delve into the cozy tales of Christmas in the Shire, take a moment to settle in. Find your favorite blanket, a warm cup of tea or cider, and get comfortable. Tonight's stories are crafted just for you, to ease your mind and carry you to a place of peace and imagination. If you enjoy this magical journey, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more cozy tales, and let me know in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are? Now, let's prepare ourselves for this adventure with a moment of gentle meditation to help you fully relax and immerse yourself in the magic of the Shire. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and let's begin by taking a deep breath in. Hold it for a moment, and now slowly exhale. Feel the tension in your shoulders begin to melt away. Let's do this together again. Breathe in deeply, imagining the crisp, wintry air of the Shire filling your lungs. Hold it, letting the peace of Hobbiton settle in, and slowly release, exhaling all the worries of the day. As you breathe, picture yourself walking through the snowy hills of the Shire. Your footsteps crunch lightly in the fresh snow. The air smells of pine and wood smoke, and the distant hum of laughter and music fills your ears. Feel the warmth of this scene wrap around you like a comforting blanket. Now, breathe in again. This time, imagine inhaling the joy and cheer of Hobbiton's Yule celebrations. Picture the laughter of hobbits, the glow of fires, and the scent of freshly baked goods. Hold on to that warmth for a moment, and as you exhale, feel your body become lighter, sinking into your seat with ease and tranquility. Continue this rhythm, allowing each breath to carry you further into peace. Inhale the simplicity and beauty of the Shire. Exhale into calm and stillness. Let the soft music in the background guide you deeper into this serene world. Allow your thoughts to wander freely, like a gentle breeze through the trees of Hobbiton. You are safe, you are warm, and you are welcome here. When you're ready, open your mind to the magic of the Shire, and let's begin our cozy journey together. It was a crisp winter morning in Hobbiton, the kind of morning that made your breath puff out in little clouds, and your cheeks tingle with the cold. Snow had fallen steadily overnight, blanketing the Shire in a glistening, white layer that turned every hill and tree into a postcard. Perfect scene. Little Hobbit children played in the streets, their laughter ringing out as they built snow. Hobbits or engaged in friendly snowball fights. The air smelled of pine, wood smoke, and the faint aroma of baking bread as every home seemed to be preparing for the grand holiday. At Bag End, Frodo and Sam were already busy at work. Inside the cozy hobbit hole, the fireplace roared with warmth, and the kitchen was a hive of activity. Samwise Gamgee, ever the industrious cook, had taken charge of the preparations. He wore a well-used apron and had already been up since before dawn. A dozen bowls, pots, and pans cluttered the kitchen table, each filled with ingredients in varying states of readiness. "Mr. Frodo, do you think this pudding bowl's big enough?" Sam asked, holding up a vast wooden bowl that looked more like a small tub. Frodo chuckled, adjusting the scarf around his neck as he glanced at the bowl. "Sam, I think if it gets any bigger, we'll have to invite all of Hobbiton to finish it." Sam laughed, though his brow was furrowed with concentration. This pudding wasn't just any pudding. It was going to be the pious-y, dry substance of the Christmas feast. He had spent weeks collecting the finest ingredients: candied fruits from Brie, golden syrup from the far reaches of the Shire, and spices from markets as far away as the Grey Havens. "Don't you worry, Mr. Frodo," Sam said. "This here pudding's going to be a marvel. Just you wait." As the two hobbits worked, the kitchen became a whirlwind of flour, sugar, and laughter. Sam carefully mixed the batter, adding a touch of this and a sprinkle of that, while Frodo chopped apples and peeled oranges. The room filled with the delightful aroma of nutmeg, cinnamon, and brandy. Just as they were finding their rhythm, there came a knock at the door. Frodo opened it to reveal Pippin and Merry, their cheeks red from the cold and their arms laden with gifts and mischief. "Ah, just in time to help," Frodo said, stepping aside to let them in. "Help, or supervise," Merry quipped, winking as he set down a basket of what looked suspiciously like fireworks. Pippin grinned. "We heard there was pudding to be made. Thought you might need a hand. Or four." But Sam eyed them warily, already sensing trouble. "As long as you don't start tinkering with the recipe, I suppose you can help." The two younger hobbits dove in with enthusiasm, though their idea of helping quickly turned chaotic. Pippin managed to spill half a sack of flour across the table, while Merry got into an argument with Sam about the proper amount of brandy to add to the batter. "More brandy, I say," Merry declared, holding the bottle aloft. "It's Christmas. It's supposed to be merry, and you'll be merry flat on your back if you add any more," Sam grumbled, snatching the bottle away. Despite the antics, the pudding began to take shape. The batter was poured into the enormous bowl, and Sam set to work steaming it over the fire. Meanwhile, Frodo turned his attention to the decorations, stringing holly and ivy across the mantle, while Pippin and Merry attempted to hang garlands. As the day wore on, the other members of the Fellowship began to arrive. Legolas was the first, bringing a basket of delicate elven pastries, their edges dusted with powdered sugar that sparkled like freshly fallen snow. Gimli arrived next, his booming laugh echoing through Bag End, as he carried in a heavy pot of dwarven stew, rich with root vegetables and fragrant herbs, stew fit for a king or a hobbit with a good appetite. Gimli declared, setting the pot down with a third. Aragorn arrived soon after, bringing roasted venison and a hearty loaf of bread he had baked himself, much to the surprise of the hobbits. "Even a ranger needs to know his way around a kitchen," he said with a smile. Gandalf was the last to arrive, his staff tapping softly on the snow-covered path as he entered Bag End. He carried a bottle of spiced wine, the aroma of cloves and citrus filling the air as he uncorked it. "An old recipe," he said mysteriously, "best enjoyed with good friends and a roaring fire." On as evening fell, the feast began. The table in Bag End's dining room was laden with food, roasted meats, stews, breads, pies, and of course, Sam's magnificent pudding. The hobbits sang carols as they worked, their voices rising in cheerful harmony. When the time came to serve the pudding, Sam poured a ladle of brandy over it and lit it with a match. The flames danced brightly, illuminating the faces of the fellowship as they cheered and clapped. Frodo raised a glass, his heart full as he looked around the table. "To friendship," he said, "and to Christmas in the Shire." The night ended with stories and songs by the fire. The fellowship gathered close as snow fell gently outside. It was a Christmas to remember, full of warmth, laughter, and the simple joys that made life in the Shire so special. It was a quiet evening in the Shire, and Bag End was aglow with the warm light of the hearth. The fellowship and a few other hobbit friends had gathered in the cozy sitting room, their bellies full from the Christmas feast, their hearts light with cheer. Frodo, leaning comfortably against a cushion near the fire, turned to his uncle. "Uncle Bilbo," he said, his voice soft but eager. "You've always told the most remarkable tales. Do you have a Christmas story to share with us tonight?" Bilbo, who had been sipping a mug of spiced cider, set it down with a thoughtful smile. His eyes twinkled as they always did when he was about to spin a tale. "Ha, Frodo, I do believe I have just the story," he said. "It's about a Christmas long ago, when I was a young hobbit, full of curiosity and mischief. It's a tale of wonder, magic, and the lessons of kindness." The room quieted as everyone leaned in closer, their attention fixed on Bilbo. Even Gandalf, seated in the corner with his pipe, seemed particularly interested. Bilbo began, his voice rich and steady. "It was a Christmas season much like this one, though I dare say it was colder. Snow covered the hills of Hobbiton, and the air was so crisp you could hear it crunch beneath your boots with every step. I was not yet the adventurous sort back then. No trolls or dragons in my story, I promise, but I did have a knack for wandering, and one frosty morning, my wandering took me farther than I had planned. I had decided to take a walk in the woods, just beyond the water. The trees were bare, their branches etched against a pale sky, and the ground was dusted with snow that sparkled like diamond dust. I was searching for holly and pine cones to decorate Bag End, but as I wandered deeper, I stumbled upon something extraordinary. There, nestled among the roots of a great old oak, was an object I had never seen before. It was an ornament, a star, to be precise. but it wasn't like any star you'd find in a hobbit's Christmas box. This star was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It seemed to glow faintly from within, its light shifting and shimmering like a tiny, contained piece of the night sky. Curiosity got the better of me, as it often did, and I picked it up. The moment my fingers touched its smooth surface, I felt a warmth spread through me, a comforting sensation that chased away the cold. As I turned it over in my hands, I realized it wasn't just a decoration. There was something magical about it, but Bilbo paused, letting the anticipation build. The hobbits in the room were hanging on his every word, their eyes wide with wonder. When I brought it back to Bag End, Bilbo continued. I placed it atop the little tree I'd set up in the corner of my sitting room. It looked beautiful, casting a gentle, silvery glow over the room. But that night, something remarkable happened. As I lay in bed, the star began to shimmer more brightly, filling the room with a soft, silvery light. I heard a voice, not loud, but clear, as if it were speaking directly into my thoughts. The voice told me that the star was no ordinary ornament. It was a Christmas star, and it had the power to grant a wish. But there was a condition. The wish had to be selfless, born of kindness, and meant to help another. At first, I didn't know what to do. A wish. The possibilities seemed endless. I could have asked for anything. A larger pantry, a cozier hearth, perhaps even an adventure to shake up my quiet little life. But every time I thought of a wish, the star seemed to dim, as if it could sense my hesitation. The next day, as I walked through Hobbiton, I noticed how many of my neighbours seemed troubled despite the holiday cheer. Old Mrs. Cotton down the lane didn't have enough firewood to keep her home warm. The Proudfoot children were playing in threadbare coats that didn't quite fit, and the Gamgees, they hadn't enough flour to bake even a small loaf of bread for Christmas dinner. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the star's message. This wasn't about me. It was about what I could do for others. That night, I made my wish. I asked the star to bring warmth, comfort, and joy to those who needed it most. When I awoke the next morning, I found the star dimmed, its light spent, but the Shire was aglow with kindness. Somehow, firewood had appeared at Mrs. Cotton's doorstep. The Proudfoot children had new coats, and the Gamgees' kitchen was filled with the scent of freshly baked bread. No one knew where these gifts had come from, and I didn't tell. It was enough to see their smiles and hear their laughter. The star may have faded, but its lesson stayed with me. The greatest magic lies not in what we wish for ourselves, but in what we can do for others. And so, every Christmas since, I've tried to carry that spirit of giving with me. Bilbo's voice trailed off, and the room was silent for a moment, the weight of the story settling over everyone. Then Frodo spoke, his voice full of warmth. "That's a wonderful tale, Uncle Bilbo," he said. "Indeed," Gandalf added, his eyes twinkling. "A tale worthy of a place in Middle Earth's lore." The friends sat together a while longer, their hearts full as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the Shire in a peaceful blanket of white. It was the quiet of the night that called Pippin from the warmth of his bed. The fire in his little hobbit hole had long since faded into embers, and the blankets were heavy with the comfort of a long winter's sleep. But still, he couldn't shake the feeling of restlessness. It was the middle of winter, and the moonlight had a strange, silver glow that seemed to invite adventure. The Shire was peaceful as it often was, but Pippin's mind was filled with a curious energy that made him yearn for a stroll under the quiet stars. Dressed in his thick woolen coat, scarf, and boots, he slipped out of his hobbit hole and into the crisp night air. The ground was covered in a soft blanket of snow, each footstep leaving a gentle mark on the untouched landscape. The moon hung low, casting a pale glow on the rolling hills and winding paths of Hobbiton, making everything seem surreal and magical. There was something about the winter that always made the Shire look different, like a dream. Pippin took a deep breath, savoring the fresh, cold air. He had always loved the winter. It was a time when the hustle and bustle of everyday life slowed down, and the world seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The quiet made him feel as if he were the only person awake, and for a moment, he relished the solitude as he walked further from his home. The sounds of Hobbiton, the distant chatter of neighbors, the crackle of fires, faded into the distance. He found himself walking along a snow-covered field, the path winding between tall hedgerows. The only sounds now were the soft crunch of snow beneath his boots and the occasional rustle of a tree branch swaying in the breeze. It was then that he heard something. At first, it was faint, a soft hum in the distance, but it grew clearer as he walked further. It was a melody, gentle and haunting, carried on the wind like a forgotten song. Intrigued, Pippin quickened his pace, following the sound through the quiet fields. As he rounded a bend in the path, he saw a figure standing by the edge of the field. The man, or perhaps not quite a man, was dressed in a long, flowing cloak, his hair and beard as white as the snow surrounding him. He was sitting on a log by a small campfire, his fingers gently strumming the strings of a lute. The tune he played was beautiful, simple, and ancient, like the kind of music one might hear from a time long forgotten. Pippin stopped a few paces away, watching in awe. The minstrel seemed to sense his presence and looked up, his eyes twinkling beneath the folds of his white beard. "Well met, young hobbit," the minstrel said in a voice that was both warm and mysterious. "What brings you out into the cold night?" Pippin, still a bit startled, smiled sheepishly. "I couldn't sleep. The night was calling to me, so I thought I'd take a little walk. And I heard your music. It's beautiful, Bok." The minstrel smiled, setting down his lute and gesturing for Pippin to join him by the fire. "You have a good ear, young hobbit. This is a song of the old days, when the Shire was still young and the hills were filled with stories." Pippin's curiosity was piqued, and without a second thought, he moved closer to the fire. Settling on the log next to the minstrel, he pulled his coat tightly around him, the warmth from the fire making the cold seem like a distant memory. "What kind of stories?" Pippin asked eagerly. The minstrel's eyes seemed to sparkle as he looked into the flames. "The stories of the Shire, long ago, before the days of hobbits like you and me. The land was full of magic. The trees were taller, the rivers deeper, and the earth was alive with secrets. The hobbits who lived here, well, they were not always the simple folk you know today." Pippin leaned in closer, hanging on to every word. "The first hobbits," the minstrel continued, "they came to the Shire from distant lands, following the rivers and the streams. They were travelers, adventurers in their own right, who sought a quiet and peaceful place to settle. But the land of the Shire had its own mysteries, and the hobbits, though simple in many ways, had their own deep knowledge of the earth and its magic." Pippin's brow furrowed. "Magic? In the Shire? Wes?" The minstrel nodded, his voice soft but full of meaning. "Not the kind of magic you might see in the far-off lands, like elves or dwarves, but the kind that lives in the earth itself. The magic of the land, the seasons, and the stories that were passed down from generation to generation. The hobbits of the old days knew how to listen to the earth, how to hear the whispers of the wind, and the songs of the stars." Pippin felt a sense of awe growing within him. He had always thought of hobbits as simple folk, content with their quiet lives and hearty meals. But this idea of ancient hobbit magic intrigued him. He wanted to know more. "And what happened to all these old traditions?" Pippin asked. The minstrel smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Over time, the magic faded, as it always does. The Shire became more settled, and the hobbits focused on their gardens and their homes. They stopped listening to the land as they once did. But the stories, young hobbit, the stories remain, and they are still here, buried deep in the hills, in the streams, and in the hearts of those who remember." He picked up his lute again, his fingers brushing the strings as he began to play a new melody. It was slower than the first, more reflective and full of longing. Pippin closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the music to wash over him, feeling the quiet peace that the minstrel's song seemed to bring. "You see," the minstrel continued, "the hobbits of the old days celebrated not just the seasons, but the cycles of the earth itself. They marked the coming of winter not as a time of sleep, but as a time of reflection and renewal. The Shire, in its own way, is a place of deep, quiet magic. It's just waiting for the right person to listen." Pippin sat still, contemplating what the minstrel had said. He had never thought of the Shire in this way, never imagined that it held so many secrets beneath its rolling hills. He had always been content with his simple life, but now, for the first time, he felt as though there was a deeper layer to his homeland, one that he had yet to discover. "I'll listen," Pippin said quietly, a sense of resolution in his voice. "I'll listen, and maybe I'll find those stories." The minstrel nodded with a knowing smile, his eyes twinkling. "The stories are always there, young hobbit. All you need to do is listen with your heart." As the night wore on, the two sat by the fire, the minstrel's music filling the air with its haunting melody. Pippin felt something stir within him, a longing to seek out the hidden stories of the Shire, to listen for the whispers of the earth that had been forgotten by time. Eventually, the fire began to fade, and the stars overhead twinkled brighter in the cold night sky. The minstrel rose, preparing to leave, but not before turning to Pippin with one last piece of advice. "Remember, Pippin took," he said softly. "The stories of the Shire are not just in the past. They are in the present, too. They live in the hearts of those who care to listen. So listen, and you will find your own place in the story." With that, the minstrel turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Pippin to ponder the mysteries he had just begun to understand. The snow-covered field around him was silent once more, but Pippin's heart was filled with a new sense of wonder. He would listen, and perhaps, in time, he would uncover the forgotten magic of the Shire. It was a quiet evening in Hobbiton, the kind of evening that had the perfect balance of warmth from a crackling fire and a soft, chilly breeze that danced through the cracks of the windows. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and the last lingering traces of autumn as winter settled in around the Shire. Bag End, the hobbit hole nestled comfortably under the hill, was quiet except for the faint murmur of voices inside and the gentle rustling of the leaves outside as they shifted in the cold air. Frodo Baggins sat by the hearth, his feet propped up on a cushioned footstool, a book open on his lap. He had spent most of the day in the company of his cousin Merry, talking about old times, the Fellowship, and the many adventures that had long since become tales to share by the fireside. It was, after all, the season to be jolly. Yule was approaching, and both hobbits had found themselves enjoying the simple comforts of home after the trials of their earlier years. The only source of noise in the otherwise peaceful hobbit hole came from the quiet ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. Suddenly, though, something peculiar happened that broke the calm evening atmosphere. A soft dong sounded through the house. Merry, who had been sitting near the table looking over some old maps of the Shire, raised his head. "What was that?" he asked, clearly confused. Frodo looked up as well, his brow furrowing. "I don't know," he said, his voice filled with a bit of surprise. "I didn't hear anyone at the door, and I'm certain we've had no visitors." Merry stood up and walked toward the hallway, where the sound seemed to have come from. As he walked past the hearth, Frodo noticed something peculiar on the mantelpiece, a silver bell. It gleamed softly in the firelight, though it hadn't been there before. "Where did that come from?" Frodo asked, eyes wide with surprise. Merry returned to the living room, holding the bell in his hands. "I swear I heard it ringing, Frodo. I don't remember putting this here, and I certainly don't know where it came from." Frodo stood up, curiosity overtaking him. "That's odd. It must have appeared when we weren't looking, and it's not like any bell I've ever seen." The bell was a delicate thing, small and exquisitely crafted, with fine, swirling patterns etched into its surface. It gleamed silver in the light, almost glowing faintly. There was no sign of a note, or any identifying mark that could explain its sudden arrival. Merry turned the bell over in his hands, but there was nothing written on it. He shook it gently, but it did not ring. "It doesn't seem like a normal bell," Merry commented thoughtfully. "Perhaps it's some sort of magic." Frodo could not shake the feeling that something extraordinary was afoot. "I wonder if we should investigate further," he said slowly. "It's not like the Shire to have strange occurrences like this." Merry nodded, his usual mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Sure, we go on a little adventure then, just like the old days." Frodo smiled at the idea. Despite everything they had been through, the sense of adventure still lingered between them, especially in the Shire, where things were usually calm and uneventful. The two hobbits exchanged a glance, and without further hesitation, they set off from Bag End, taking the bell with them. The night had grown colder, and a thick fog had begun to roll in from the hills as the pair made their way through Hobbiton. The streets were empty, and the only light came from the faint glow of lanterns hanging from the doorways of nearby hobbit holes. They made their way to the edge of Hobbiton, where the land began to slope down toward the wild woods that stretched beyond the Shire. The trees were ancient here, and the air was thick with the scent of pine and earth. As they walked, Frodo and Merry noticed that the usual sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets, and the occasional rustle of leaves, were eerily absent. It was as though the entire world was holding its breath. The silver bell seemed to grow heavier in Frodo's pocket, and he couldn't help but feel as though the bell was guiding them somewhere, pulling them deeper into the forest. After a while, they came to a clearing where the trees seemed to grow thicker, almost as if they were enclosing the space in a secretive embrace. The ground was covered in soft moss, and small, delicate flowers glowed faintly in the darkness. At the center of the clearing was a large, ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches reaching up to the stars. Underneath it, a stone path wound its way into the heart of the forest. Suddenly, the bell in Frodo's pocket gave a soft tinkle, as though it had come alive. Startled, he pulled it out, and as soon as he did, a soft glow surrounded the clearing. The ground before them seemed to shimmer as the trees parted, revealing a hidden village that neither of them had ever seen before. The village was enchanting. Small, cozy homes built into the trunks of trees and nestled under the roots of towering oaks. Lanterns of all shapes and sizes hung from the branches, casting a warm, golden light. The soft laughter of elves and hobbits filled the air, and the scent of roasting chestnuts and sweet cider drifted from the village square. At the center of the village stood a large, beautifully decorated tree, much like a Yule tree. But unlike any tree they had ever seen, this one shimmered with silver and gold, and every branch was covered with radiant, glowing ornaments. The stars themselves seemed to dance around the tree, casting ethereal light on the villagers below. Frodo and Merry stood in awe, staring at the scene before them. Neither of them had seen anything like this in the Shire, and for a moment, they wondered if they had stumbled upon some kind of secret Yule celebration, one that no hobbit had ever been meant to witness. A small, elderly hobbit approached them, her face creased with age, but her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Ah, I see the bell has worked its magic," she said with a knowing smile. "Welcome to our village, dear hobbits. This is the hidden gathering place for those who still celebrate the ancient Yule traditions of the Shire." Frodo blinked, his mind racing. "But we didn't know this place existed." The elderly hobbit laughed gently. "No, most hobbits have long forgotten the old ways, but we've kept the traditions alive, and we've made sure the magic remains in the heart of the forest. Your bell was a signal, and it has brought you to us." Merry and Frodo exchanged a glance, both surprised and intrigued. "So, this is a Yule celebration?" Frodo asked. "But we've never seen anything like it." The hobbit nodded. "Indeed, we celebrate the Yule in a way that most have forgotten. We honor the earth and the stars, and we share the warmth of friendship and community. Every year, we gather here to give thanks for the year gone by, and to prepare for the year ahead." Frodo felt a sense of peace and wonder wash over him as he looked around. The village was alive with joy, and the air was thick with magic. It was as if they had stepped into another world, one where time had slowed, and the spirit of Yule was alive and well. As the evening wore on, Frodo and Merry joined in the festivities, feasting on sweet treats, sipping warm cider, and sharing stories with the villagers. They were given gifts: a small pouch of enchanted herbs from the elder hobbit, a beautifully carved wooden ornament for Frodo, and a soft, warm scarf for Merry, which had been woven by the elves who lived in the village. When it was time to leave, the villagers gathered around them, and the elderly hobbit gave them one final gift: a small silver bell, identical to the one that had brought them to this magical place. "Take this with you," she said, "and remember, the spirit of Yule lives on in the hearts of those who remember the old ways. It is a gift of magic and memory." With that, Frodo and Merry made their way back through the enchanted forest, the bell still softly glowing in Frodo's hand. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a celebration of life, community, and tradition that had long been forgotten, and though they would never speak of it again, both hobbits carried the memory of that night with them, knowing that the magic of Yule would always be with them, just as it had been with the elves and hobbits who lived in the hidden village deep in the forest. And as they returned to Bag End, the silver bell still glowing in the moonlight, they realized that some mysteries were meant to be kept close to the heart, treasures of the past that would live on in their memories forever. It was a crisp winter morning in Hobbiton, and the Shire was draped in a thick blanket of snow. The frost-covered trees and hedgerows sparkled like diamonds under the weak light of the sun. The hobbits, always practical and prepared, had long since gathered firewood, tidied their hobbit holes, and began making preparations for the Yule celebrations that were just around the corner. The warmth of their hearths filled the air with the comforting smells of baking bread roasted chestnuts, and sweet pies. But this winter, there was a slight difference in the air, a sense of excitement, as though the very ground hummed with the anticipation of something magical. It wasn't just the promise of feasts or the twinkling lights that hung from every hobbit hole. No, this year, the hobbits had decided to do something a bit different. Something that hadn't been done in many years, perhaps not since the old days, when magic still danced lightly on the breeze. It all began when the children of Hobbiton, who had heard the tales of distant lands and mythical creatures, decided that they wanted to ask a very special someone for gifts. For the past few years, whispers had spread throughout the Shire, whispers of a magical figure who had been spotted in the forest, carrying gifts and spreading cheer to those who were deserving. It was not Santa Claus, but someone they had come to know by a different name, Santa Gandalf. The Hobbit children, filled with curiosity and hope, gathered around their village squares and homes, busy at work with colored pens and parchment. Each child wrote a letter addressed to Santa Gandalf, and while most children still believed in the tales of old, their letters were filled not with wishes for toys or trinkets, but with dreams for the future, hopes for their families, and wishes of health and happiness for the Shire itself. Each child's letter was unique, a reflection of their own desires and the simplicity of their hobbit lives. Young Tom Took, ever the prankster, asked for an endless supply of fireworks to light up the night skies, while Rosie Cotton, thoughtful as always, requested that her family's farm be blessed with good weather for the coming year's harvest. Little Peregrine Took, or Pippin as everyone called him, wished for a set of silver spoons to help him serve his favorite meals during the Yule feast. Some wrote with a certain mischievous gleam in their eyes, others with deep earnestness in their hearts. But all of them shared one thing in common: the belief that Santa Gandalf, the Wizard of Yule, would hear their wishes and see to it that they received the gifts they truly needed. The letters were carefully sealed with wax and stamped with the insignia of each child's family. Some families, of course, still had the old tradition of visiting the great oak tree in Hobbiton's village square to hang their letters in the branches, where they believed the winds would carry their wishes to the distant corners of Middle-earth. It was a quaint practice, one passed down through the generations, and it filled the air with a sense of mystery and magic. In the days that followed, Hobbiton was a buzz of excitement. Every hobbit hole seemed to glow with the warmth of freshly baked treats, and children eagerly awaited any sign of Gandalf's presence. They wondered if he would come in the dark of night, sliding down their chimneys with gifts in hand, or if he would leave small packages tied with ribbons on their doorsteps, just as the stories promised. But no one could have expected what was to come. On the eve of Yule, just as the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, something extraordinary happened. As the hobbits of Hobbiton gathered in their cozy homes, preparing for the long night ahead, something magical began to unfold. No one had seen the wizard. No one had heard him enter the village. But when the hobbits opened their doors the following morning, they were met with a most delightful surprise. Every family in Hobbiton found a small, carefully wrapped gift waiting for them on their doorstep, each one marked with a delicate silver ribbon and bearing the mysterious signature, Santa Gandalf. And so, it was that the magic of the wizard worked wonders, far beyond what any of them could have expected. The gifts themselves were as varied as the families in the Shire, each one thoughtfully chosen with the recipients in mind. The Bolger family, known for their love of gardening, found a basket filled with the finest seeds for rare flowers and herbs that would bloom even in the winter's chill. The Gamgee family, long known for their cooking skills, received an assortment of rare spices that had been carefully chosen from the far corners of Middle-earth, spices that would help them create even more delicious meals to share with their friends and family. At Bag End, Frodo and Bilbo found their gift tucked beside the door, a fine book of poetry, its pages worn and old, but its words brimming with wisdom and beauty. The two hobbits exchanged a look of gratitude, the kind that only came from a deep understanding of the gifts of knowledge and time that were most precious to them. Elsewhere, the gifts were just as thoughtful and personal. The Proudfoots found a new set of finely crafted walking sticks, carved from the finest wood, each one custom, made to suit their stature and comfort. The Tooks, whose home was always filled with music, discovered a collection of rare musical instruments, each one tuned to perfection, just waiting to be played. And though many hobbits had their own suspicions about who could have left such gifts, the one name that lingered on everyone's lips was that of Gandalf. For though the wizard had never been seen, his presence was felt deeply in the hearts of the Shire's residents, and his gifts, though small, were perfect in their thoughtfulness. For Gandalf, though known for his great wisdom and power, had always been a figure who understood the value of simplicity, and in his own quiet way, he had delivered a message to the hobbits that true gifts were not always grand or extravagant, but were often the most meaningful when they came from the heart. The day after Yule was spent in celebration, not just because of the gifts, but because of the kindness that filled the air. Families gathered together, sharing food, stories, and laughter, grateful for the warmth that their homes provided and the bonds that tied them together. And though no one spoke of it aloud, each child knew that Gandalf had somehow heard their wishes, understood their hearts, and given them something more than just a physical gift. He had given them the gift of connection, of being seen and heard, even in the smallest of gestures. And so it was that in the days that followed, the legend of Santa Gandalf only grew stronger. The children continued to write their letters, year after year, to the wizard they believed brought magic and joy to their lives. And every year, no matter how big or small, their wishes were fulfilled in the most unexpected of ways. It was a tradition that continued on in the Shire, one that would always be remembered as part of the magic of the season when Gandalf, the Wizard of Yule, showed the hobbits the true meaning of kindness, love, and the joy of giving. As for Gandalf, well, he remained as mysterious and elusive as ever, content to watch from the shadows, knowing that his work was done for another year. And every year, when the stars shone brightly in the winter sky and the bells of Hobbiton rang out in celebration, the hobbits of the Shire would continue to whisper his name, knowing that somewhere, somehow, Santa Gandalf was watching over them, ensuring that the magic of Yule would never be forgotten. Once, in a small and forgotten corner of the Shire, there stood a house perched beside the Brandywine River. It was a little cottage with moss-covered stone walls, nestled under the shade of towering willows, their long, sweeping branches brushing the water's surface. The cottage had a long history, passed down through generations of brandybucks, but in recent years, it had been left alone. The old cottage, known as Old Brandywine, was not forgotten entirely, yet few remembered the tales of its strange and wondrous lantern. The tale began many, many years ago, when a young brandybuck named Thistlefoot, a kind-hearted hobbit known for his endless curiosity, had been tasked with caring for the cottage. Thistlefoot was not one to shy away from any task, no matter how small or peculiar. So when his parents had asked him to clean and prepare the house for a grand Yule gathering, he had enthusiastically agreed. The family was going to have a grand feast, and it was Thistlefoot's job to ensure the home was cozy and warm for their guests. Little did he know, his preparations would lead him into a long, forgotten mystery. As he wandered through the cobwebbed corridors of the cottage, he stumbled upon an old wooden chest, which had been hidden beneath the floorboards in one of the rooms. Thistlefoot, who loved to explore, was intrigued. With a little bit of effort, he pried the chest open, revealing an assortment of old belongings, mementos, faded maps, and odd trinkets. But among them was a curious object, a small, tarnished lantern, its surface engraved with strange runes that Thistlefoot had never seen before. What intrigued him most was the faint glow that emanated from the lantern, as though it had a light of its own, even though it was not lit. Curious, he picked up the lantern and turned it over in his hands. As he did, a soft whisper seemed to fill the air around him, a voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The lantern hummed with a faint energy, and Thistlefoot, uncertain but drawn to its mystery, decided to hang it by the window. It was Christmas Eve, and the night was settling in, perfect for a little bit of magic, or so he thought. That night, as the snow began to fall, Thistlefoot's family gathered around the hearth, enjoying food and drink, singing songs, and telling tales of the past. Yet, something strange happened. The lantern, which had been hanging by the window, cast a warm, golden glow out into the night. The light seemed to dance on the snow, lighting up the path that led toward the old forest. No one paid it any mind at first, but as the night grew darker, the glow from the lantern grew brighter. It was as if the very heart of the lantern beat with life. Suddenly, a knock came at the door. Thistlefoot opened it, thinking it was a late guest or perhaps a neighbor. But standing at the threshold was a tall figure, cloaked in a mantle of snow, a face obscured by a hood. The figure said nothing, but simply stepped inside, drawn toward the lantern's glow. As the figure crossed the threshold, a soft murmur spread through the room. The lantern flickered and shimmered as though responding to the stranger's presence. The mysterious figure moved toward the window and stood in front of the lantern, staring at it for a long time. Thistlefoot's family stood in silence, unsure of what to say or do. The stranger turned to them at last, his voice soft and clear, but full of a deep, ancient wisdom. "This lantern is a gift," the figure said, "one that has been passed down for generations in the Brandybuck family. It holds the light of yore, the spirit of the season, and the magic of the old ways." The family members exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to make of this, but the figure continued. "It has not been seen for many years, but it has been waiting for the right time. It is time to remember the old traditions, to welcome the Yule with open hearts, and to spread light into the dark times. You, Thistlefoot, are the one who has brought the lantern back into the light. Now, it is your turn to share it with others." Before anyone could respond, the figure stepped back into the night, disappearing into the swirling snowstorm. Thistlefoot, still clutching the lantern, could hardly believe what had just happened. The stranger had left behind no trace, and yet something about the lantern felt different now. It was no longer an object of mystery. It was a symbol, a beacon of something far older and more powerful than the simple holiday traditions they had grown used to. As the days passed, Thistlefoot's family began to notice the changes the lantern had brought with it. The warmth in the house seemed to radiate farther, touching everyone who came near. The snow outside, which had once seemed cold and barren, now shimmered with a soft, inviting glow. People from near and far came to the house, drawn by the light of the lantern. They told stories, sang songs, and shared the warmth of the season. The lantern, it seemed, had not just brought light to the cottage, it had also brought people together. Over the years that followed, Thistlefoot and his family kept the lantern by their hearth every Yule. It became a symbol of togetherness and peace, a reminder that the light of Yule could always shine through the darkest of times. The cottage was never without visitors. During the holiday season, as word spread far and wide about the magic that the lantern brought, and each year, on Christmas Eve, Thistlefoot would place the lantern in the window, waiting for the glow to spread across the land and remind everyone of the true spirit of the season. The mystery of the silver lantern remained, but the Brandybucks understood that some things were not meant to be fully explained. Its magic was timeless, and its glow would never fade, no matter how many years passed. The light of Yule had returned to the Shire, not through grand displays or lavish feasts, but through the quiet power of a single lantern that brought warmth and light to all who welcomed it into their homes. And so, the story of the Christmas lantern of old Brandywine lived on, told and retold in whispers and songs, reminding the hobbits of the Shire and all who listened that magic was never far away, especially at Christmas time. It was not always seen in grand gestures, but often in the quiet moments, the flickering light of a lantern, the shared laughter of friends, and the warmth of hearts bound together in the spirit of the season. It was said that in Hobbiton, long before the Great Smiles or even Bag End had been built, there stood a tree so magnificent that it could be seen from miles around. It wasn't just any tree, mind you, but a Yule tree, an ancient oak that had stood the test of centuries, its roots deep in the soil of the Shire, and its branches reaching toward the sky, as if welcoming the stars themselves. The tree was said to bloom only once every year, when the first snow of winter fell upon the land, and it was then that Hobbiton would come together to celebrate the holiday. Now, most of the younger hobbits had never seen this tree, as it had long since been forgotten by time, and the older ones only spoke of it in hushed tones, as if it were a memory too precious to be fully told. But every year, on Christmas Eve, the hobbits of Hobbiton would gather in the center of the village, beneath a tree that stood at the heart of the marketplace, and they would tell the story of the Yule tree. The tale began centuries ago, when a hobbit named Old Took, who, by all accounts, was quite a bit more adventurous than most of his kin, decided that there should be a tree to mark the coming of winter. Old Took, a man of great ideas and even greater heart, had always believed that there was something magical about the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. He had heard tales from the elves of distant lands, stories of trees that bloomed in the coldest of times, their leaves shimmering with the light of stars. Old Took decided that the Shire should have its very own Yule tree, a place where all the hobbits could gather to celebrate the season. Old Took's idea was met with much excitement, though not without some skepticism. The older hobbits weren't quite sure what to make of the notion of a tree that could bloom in winter, and many thought it was a rather silly idea. But Old Took was determined. He went to the very heart of the Shire and planted an oak sapling, whispering words of ancient magic that he had learned from the elves. He cared for the sapling through the seasons, tending to it with care and love, though he knew that it would take many years before it would become the tree he envisioned. As the years passed, the tree grew, and so did the legend of the Yule tree. But it wasn't until one particularly harsh winter that the magic of the tree truly revealed itself. On Christmas Eve, after a heavy snowstorm had covered Hobbiton in a blanket of white, a strange light appeared in the sky. It wasn't like the usual light of the stars, nor was it the glow of the moon. It was a soft, warm glow, as if the tree itself had caught the light of the stars and was reflecting it back onto the earth. The hobbits, curious and eager to see what was happening, gathered around the tree. What they saw was beyond belief. The tree's branches, which had been bare and covered in snow, were now covered in shimmering golden leaves. The glow from the tree lit up the entire village, casting a gentle light over the snow-covered rooftops. It was as if the tree itself had come to life, bringing warmth and joy to the cold night. From that night onward, the Yule tree became a symbol of Christmas in the Shire. Every year, on Christmas Eve, the hobbits would gather beneath its boughs to celebrate the holiday, singing songs, sharing food, and telling stories. The Yule tree, they believed, was the heart of the season, and its light brought joy and peace to the Shire, no matter how dark the winter nights might be. But there was one thing that made this tree truly special, a secret that only a few knew. The Yule tree wasn't just a tree. It was said to have a magic of its own, a magic that could grant a wish to anyone who stood beneath its boughs on Christmas Eve. The wish, however, wasn't for wealth or fame, nor was it for power or glory. The wish, the hobbits believed, was for something much more important. It was for kindness, love, and the spirit of the season to fill the hearts of all who gathered there. One year, as the snow fell heavily on the night of Christmas Eve, a small hobbit named Hilda approached the tree. She was just a child, but she had always been curious about the tree and its magic. Hilda had heard the older hobbits whispering about the wish that could be made, and she had long wanted to try it herself. With a heart full of hope, she stood before the Yule tree and whispered her wish into the cold night air. "I wish for the Shire to always be filled with happiness and love," Hilda said softly, her words carried away by the wind. "I wish that no matter what happens, the spirit of Christmas will always be with us." The next morning, the hobbits awoke to find that the snow had stopped falling. The sun, low on the horizon, bathed the village in a soft, golden light. The Yule tree, once again, was covered in its shimmering leaves, and as the hobbits gathered beneath it, they felt a warmth in their hearts that they had never known before. From that day forward, the Yule tree of Hobbiton became even more beloved. It was no longer just a symbol of Christmas. It was a reminder that the true magic of the season was not found in the decorations or the gifts, but in the love and kindness that filled the hearts of all who gathered to celebrate. Each year, the tree's glow grew brighter, and the spirit of the season spread farther, until it reached every corner of the Shire. And so, the tale of the Yule tree of Hobbiton lives on, passed down through the generations. The tree still stands in the heart of Hobbiton, a beacon of warmth and joy during the cold winter nights. And every Christmas Eve, the hobbits gather around it, singing songs and sharing stories, their hearts full of love and gratitude for the magic that the Yule tree brings into their lives. For the Yule tree is not just a tree. It is a reminder that the light of Christmas can shine even in the darkest of times, bringing warmth, hope, and love to all who believe in its magic. As the last glow of the Yule tree fades into the quiet of the night, we come to the end of another cozy tale from the heart of the Shire. We hope that these stories have brought a little warmth to your winter's night, and that the magic of Christmas, like the shimmering leaves of the Yule tree, fills your heart with joy and peace. Before you drift off into a restful sleep, remember that the true spirit of the season lies in kindness, in the connections we share, and in the love we spread. Just as the hobbits of the Shire gather around their tree to celebrate, so too can we find comfort in the simple pleasures of life, surrounded by those we care about. And now, as you settle into a peaceful slumber, let the soft sounds of the Shire's winter embrace you, carrying you away to sweet dreams filled with magic and wonder. Good night, and may your dreams be as gentle and bright as the Yule tree's glow.